Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Welcome to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist and full-time fiduciary, Tony Walker. And with us in the studios is Mr. Trey Juergens. And Trey, we are closing out this series on decision fatigue with part 6. And I've really enjoyed this. I appreciate you coming up with this. For those who haven't seen the former episodes, of course, they're on YouTube, folks. You can go to youtube.com, Tony Walker Financial, and watch them all. But remind the audience how you came up with this and why.
Yeah, this was an actual appointment that led to me scurrying down the hall and saying, Tony, I've got an idea for this show. It was a couple, he was retiring, and they were both kind of tackling all the decisions that went into his retirement. She was already retired, I think a teacher on a pension. Hers was pretty easy to figure out. He had 2 pensions, a 401k. They were on his health insurance. He was 62. They weren't yet to Medicare. It was all these different things, and they just kind of looked at me and they're like, we're just sick of making decisions. So when we laid out a game plan, it allowed them to kind of check those things off the list. And they went down the list, and by the time we were done meeting, everything was taken care of.
You know, and I think about it, here we record this show in, what is this, late November 2025. And I'm always talking about my granddad. You probably get tired of hearing about my grandpa, but it's so cool to think back about what he went through when he retired from Bell South in 1978. There's a shot of he and I sitting on the porch there in Troy, Kentucky. But I thought about that. You go through all this, even rattling all that stuff off. He had nothing to decide. I remember he came home and told Hazel he was retiring in 2 weeks. I didn't even know what they were talking about. I'd never been around anybody that retired. He shows back up. He's got a license plate that says I was retired, a hat with a rude gesture on there that one of his buddies gave him, a gold clock, and he never went back to work. And I don't remember him stressed. I don't remember him having to make any decisions. I think the only decision he made, in fact, put this up, Aaron, we show this all the time, this is his actual pension statement. He had to decide if Hazel was going to get 50% or 100% at his death. That was it. So let's speak to that a little bit, and this number of baby boomers that are retiring and what you see on a regular basis, especially when I either run people down the hall who are looking to work with us, and in your opinion, because you meet with so many of these people, why are they deciding to work with Tony Walker Financial? What is it about our firm, you think, that attracts them to us?
Yeah, well, you mentioned that Granddad didn't have to make a whole lot of decisions. Now, all the decisions are put on the retiree. The employer steps out of it. They've allowed you and Wall Street to be in charge of your retirement savings. So when you have this 401k and you're all of a sudden expected to retire, decide on Social Security, maybe you have a pension to go along with that, you're really going it alone, and without being able to entrust a financial advisor or retirement planner specifically, you don't really know what to do. You've worked in something else, not in retirement planning, so how are you to know what to do?
And as you even mentioned that, I'm just thinking out loud, even that 401k plan, think how many decisions we have, again, that Granddad never had, about what's going to happen to the 401k. You know, in our previous episode, we talked about IRMA and effective Medicare premiums, and then the tax tumor and what's going to be left to the kids and how much can I spend without going into higher tax brackets. Again, folks, decisions my granddad never had to consider. So as we talk about this whole decision-making process, of course, now, you know, I got my pop psychology degree from Western Kentucky University. I do like to think through, why do some people can make decisions very quickly. I'm one of those, I can make a decision pretty quickly. Now, sometimes they're not always right, but I've never had problems making decisions. Some people have trouble making decisions, and you found this article. Let's put this up, Derek. This is really interesting, and I agree with this. But I think tell me if you think I'm correct on this. I think the reason people sometimes cannot make a decision is they're looking for more than 75%. What say you on this?
No, that's exactly right. I think people that are a lot of savers are intelligent people. They're researchers. We know that. And when they're researching something, sometimes that paralysis by analysis leads them not to do anything. They want to get to that 100% of knowledge in that subject before they do anything. A lot of the times, as this article states, you only need about 75% to really make an informed decision.
I agree with that. Oh, speaking of the YouTube channel, and folks, by the way, over the years, I've been doing this 41 years, all the books I've written, all the YouTube videos we have up, one thing I've always tried to do is the purpose of those is really for our clients and prospective clients to learn more about us. I get kind of tickled. You know, we don't have that many YouTube views. We've never tried to go nationally with it. Those YouTube channel for us at Tony Walker Financial is to educate our clients and prospective clients about what we do. But man, Trey, back to these decision fatigue. Have you gone online to see all of the YouTube videos now of people that, and some of these people have a huge following, and I'm watching them, I'm like, who are these people? And people coming to me now are watching all these YouTube videos. I'll give you an example. Social Security. When do I take Social Security? I watched one video, a fellow says 70, another lady said 62. Folks, all I would say is, yeah, watch all the YouTube videos you want, but eventually, what does it all come down to, Trey?
Your situation.
That's right.
And I think the biggest thing, and I've learned early in my career as a financial advisor, the easiest answer is it depends. And the problem with YouTube videos is a lot of the stuff you see, there's no it depends. It's very definitive, very black and white advice that a lot of the time is not really good advice.
Very good. And one of the things we thought about too, we've got a little bit of extra time here. I didn't know we'd have time, and I do want to cover this, our staff input. Now, we went through all of the things we thought about that we hear from our clients from an advisory standpoint. But folks, we got a wonderful staff at Tony Walker Financial. We have total, besides me, 20 full-time employees. Of course, myself, Trey, Wes, and Heather are salaried fiduciaries, do a great job. But speak to our staff a little bit and how much interaction our staff from a service standpoint has with our clients, and why we're going to them right now for some input.
Yeah, well, the big thing is our staff and our business is not staffed the way that the regular financial world is. Financial world typically has a lot of advisors, a lot of people out there selling and talking to different clients. Our staff is 4 salaried fiduciaries, and the rest is service staff. And that service staff is on the phone daily with our clients, making decisions, helping them revert back to this game plan we put in place sometimes 20 years ago, and kind of helping them steer decisions at, obviously with the direction of the advisors, but our staff is so ingrained in what our clients are doing.
Yeah, I often said anybody can sell you stuff. It's another thing to service it. In fact, somebody came in the other day, they were all put out, they'd bought an annuity from somebody recently. I think they were a tax preparer or something. I don't know what it was, but they went in to get their beneficiaries changed, and the person handed them a form, said, here you go. And they're like, I don't know how to fill this out. And they said, we don't do that. So what we're going to do, folks, we're going to take a quick break. I want to come back because you talked to our staff and you posed this question. What are some things that you're hearing from clients, specific clients in the service realm, that are giving them decision fatigue? So folks, good stuff coming up. If you're retired or nearing retirement and you're a saver, you're going to want to hear what we have to say next. We'll be right back. Want to know what most advisors hate talking about? The fees they're going to charge you to manage your money. Not so with Tony Walker Financial. In fact, we are so confident in our services that we now have a posted video on our website called How We Get Paid. So before blindly handing over your money to just any advisor who won't tell you how they get paid, check out our video at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or give us a call anytime at 877-499-9255. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement, and as we continue our trek in our final episode of Decision Fatigue, now we're on part 6. We're going to go to some staff input, but I think before we got the staff input and some of the decision fatigue they hear from clients, you were going to mention one more that we left out in the previous episodes.
Yeah, the one we were going to kind of cover here, and this shocks people the way we answer it sometimes now, is, but how much money should they keep in emergency funds or emergency savings?
Of course, I'd say 20, 30 years ago, 5 or 10,000 was plenty, but what do we usually tell people now?
Yeah, well, I think COVID changed the world in a lot of ways, and unfortunately, we noticed quickly that a lot of people just didn't have emergency savings. And as financial advisors, obviously we are not going to let a bunch of money sit around in cash. But as you say, having that lickety split money sometimes is worth a lot more than getting some measly returns on the money. So if you have some cash set aside and it's something you're comfortable with, and if it kind of creeps above what you're comfortable with, maybe you look for something, but gone are the days of just having 5,000 or 10,000 emergency savings.
And that's one thing too. If you're meeting with a retirement planning specialist such as us, what we're trying to do in the game plan is figure out and anticipate when you'll need money and lickety split. And sometimes that's where that after-tax money sitting in the bank is invaluable versus somebody who needs 40 or 50,000 out of the blue and we got to drag it out of a tax-infested IRA. That's disastrous. Okay, we got a bunch of these. Let's take Shannon. Shannon Ross is in charge of all of our trading. Man, she does a wonderful job. You know, she started with us in 2017, really helped me kind of go, we had Vanguard at the time, but implement the Schwab platform. Just does a wonderful job. I think she did 36,000 trades last year. Folks, we do all this in-house. Nobody's doing this that I'm aware of. But her question that she gets a lot of times from clients is, how do I handle taxes on retirement withdrawals? Because she sets up the withdrawals.
Yeah, this is a huge one, and it's a funny aha moment. We take it for granted that, yeah, you're going to withhold this. It's going to go straight to your checking account. You lose your employer paychecks, and we just pick up where that left off by sending you distributions from Schwab. They hit your checking account, and we withhold the taxes. It seems pretty simple, but when we explain those steps, our clients are like, what? That just seemed to make too much sense.
And then we got TJ and Leanne who are tax certified. They'll go over that and confirm things, but that's a very typical question. Let's see, dovetail that because I saw one from Monita. Yeah, let's keep going to the distributions because again, folks, let's say you have a Charles Schwab account through Tony Walker Financial that we manage. Obviously, you can see the account on Charles Schwab online, but you're not having to deal with Charles Schwab. You're not calling 1-800 numbers. Everything is handled in-house. So let's stay through that. Let's say on the game plan, somebody is wanting to take $5,000 a month or whatever out of Charles Schwab. We've already set up the tax withholdings. Here's what Juanita, who's in charge of the new business with Schwab, here's all the time. Two-part, can systematic distributions be set up weekly, monthly, or bi-monthly? And then also, are they withholding taxes from one-time distributions? In other words, we have some people taking a monthly distribution out, but they'll also say, hey, what happens if I need $30,000 lickety split out of that Schwab account? So how would you address that one?
Yes, yes, and yes. It's so flexible, and people love that about our Schwab platform. When we set up that split IRA, we talk about the liquidity and how easy it is to access that money. Juanita does that for all of our clients. Shannon gets those things set up for our clients. If we show on the game plan we're taking X amount annually, or we show everything gross as distributions, a lot of our clients are paid bi-weekly and they really want to keep that going. A lot of people budget monthly and they're okay with getting something towards the beginning of the month. Some people like to offset our Schwab distributions with when they get their Social Security, and we can do all that. And that's a conversation we typically have at that delivery appointment when we really tie everything together is, all right, time to start sending you some money. When would you like it? And the flexibility of being able to decide that is so easy.
Yeah, yesterday I had a couple in the office, and back to the Live Well, Die Broke. I think some people don't realize how much I adhere to this philosophy. The Live Well, Die Broke philosophy, folks, is basically we want to get your money back to you before it's too late. Most of the financial world likes to hang on to that money because that's how they stay in business. We know it's your money. You saved it for retirement. We want to get it back. I had a couple in, and I was looking at, it was an annual review, and I looked at their tax return. I said, you know, you got a lot of wiggle room here where we could send you some money and you would stay in the 12% bracket. And they're like, well, what do you suggest? She had a $30,000, it was kind of a one-off IRA from Schwab that we'd been sending distributions. And I said, what if we just close that out? And she said, what do you mean close it out? I said, let's just take the taxes, send it to you. You'll still be in a 12% bracket. And she laughed and she said, you know, we've been looking at making a down payment on another car. Could I use it for that? I said, hey, it's your money, do what you want. Call Shannon, a buzzer, call Shannon. She said, sure. We made sure we had the correct link to the checking account. All this stuff was verified. And Shannon closes with, okay, you'll get a net check of blah, blah, blah in 3 to 4 business days. And I hung up the phone. I said, anything else? She goes, that is so easy. So it's actually fun to send people their money back.
And that's funny because we hear the opposite from the financial world is my last advisor didn't want me pulling anything out. And that's because they were charging fees on it.
Or I think some of the advisors are picking up on the Live Well, Die Broke. Kind of the opposite thing I heard yesterday. A gentleman, I told him, I said, he wanted me to go through a game plan. He wanted a second opinion. I said, sir, you've got more money than you know what to do with. And he said, well, my advisor kind of mentioned that day I need to spend more money. And I said, well, is there a game plan? He goes, no. And I said, have you spent any more? He said, no, I'm afraid to spend anything. So just because an advisor tells you to spend money, and the advisor even put out that you're not spending money. A lot of times I think, Trey, they're afraid to spend money because they don't have the game plan. So folks, you need the game plan, and the game plan needs to be in writing. So we provide that. Oh, by the way, there's a lot of advisors talking about game plans. Some of these advisors, people are coming to us. I'm not seeing any game plans, folks. So do not invest your money with anybody who says they're going to give you a game plan if they don't give the game plan first. That's a recipe for disaster. All right, Mandy, gosh, she does a great job. She's in charge of all of our service. When to elect what we call our beloved
mailbox money.
Okay, so the mailbox money. All right, you set this scenario. Maybe we have on the game plan, Trey, we're going to start your mailbox money in the 10th year. Does that mean they have to adhere to that?
Not at all.
When can they start it?
Usually after the first year. We like to defer those. A lot of the time they have, say, a fixed roll-up rate or an income rider with a defined percentage that it's growing at. So the longer we can defer that, just like a Social Security or a pension election, the more they're going to pay you annually or monthly, of course.
Now, some people worry about this. What if they defer it 10 years and let's say we're set up, we're going to take it on a joint basis, but the couple killed in a common accident. Is the annuity just gone? Let's say they haven't drawn a penny out.
No, typically you can do what's called a survivor benefit or a spousal benefit, that they can step into the shoes as the owner and continue the ability to have that lifelong income.
And then what if they start that income and then the spouse 1 year later passes away? If there's anything left, where does that go?
Yeah, the contract value is there. It doesn't go poof. That's one of the biggest misconceptions still. And it's so funny because these products have been around for, longer than I've ever been an advisor, but everyone still seems to think that an annuity means that if you don't use all the money as distributions, that money goes away. The insurance company keeps it.
It gets frustrating sometimes. Okay, now this is Wes, one of our advisors, of course, but I like this one. He says he gets this all the time, and especially when people are transitioning from working to us and they're moving money over, and if somebody's been in the market, which is understandable, they've been working, feeding that 401k, but what is the right investment strategy when you're moving into retirement?
Yeah, I said it before, it depends. Someone might have had an okay tolerance for risk, and they've been in that 60-40 split, a lot of equities in their 401k. They've come to us with a great nest egg, but then that's it. They're retired. There's no more putting into this 401k. We're into distribution mode, and they're right away planning to pay off a house or start taking large monthly distributions. We don't want them as heavily invested in the market. So that's a conversation Wes and I and you and Heather have constantly is, you may have been comfortable with this, but according to the plan, we're going to start taking out distributions. We don't want to be so heavily in equities.
Now, it is funny. Yesterday, I had a lot of meetings yesterday. I had someone in, and they did have a lot of annuities with us, which have been secure and doing well. They've got a couple of Charles Schwab accounts. They're not taking out as much as they thought. And I said, you really don't have a lot of risk here. We had their Schwab really, really conservative. And I said, do you want to take a little more risk? Normally I don't ask that, but it was just a small percentage. They said, actually we do. We kind of were afraid to bring that up. So we moved their Schwab into one of our more aggressive portfolios based on their situation. They were fine with it. Didn't cost them a penny to move it over. We'll handle all that. So there are times, quite frankly, depending on situations, we'll let people stay in a little more of a risky position if it warrants. This is a pretty good one here. I like this. This comes from Heather. She's our full-time fiduciary in our Bowling Green office. Heather's been with me almost 20 years. She had a whole laundry list of questions, but the one I thought I picked out here that did jump off the page at me, and again, we realize a lot of people are getting ready to retire. They're savers. This is a whole new ball game for them. She gets this all the time. I do not know how much I can take out of my retirement accounts to live on. Again, Trey, put yourself in their shoes. This has got to be a scary proposition. How would you know how much to take out? So how do we help them determine that?
Well, the game plan. We put these game plans together with a lot of thought, and it's way more thought than some online retirement calculator. So when you plug in your 401k and some anticipated rate of return, and they throw you a percentage you can hopefully take out without running out of money, that's not going to make me sleep at night. So when you have a written game plan, all the assets, notes from every appointment we've had with you through this process, and we show year by year from which account we're drawing money from with very conservative returns. And we can show you, here's what you can live on. And it's that light bulb moment that, hey, here I am. I'm ready to retire and do this. It's so comforting in knowing that game plan's laid out.
Yeah, and I had a current client in yesterday, and they said that they felt like they've been taking too much out. I said, let me do an income plan audit. So in our office, we have somebody in charge of income plan audits, and that's what we do. We go to the original game plan. We have all the distributions and everything on file, so we compare that. And I guarantee you, just glancing at the original game plan, and they thought they were taking out a lot, because we had assumed such a low rate of return, I was peeking at how much we've made them. They're going to be fine. But I wanted to verify, but that's a good point. Well, Trey, I've really enjoyed having you on, and I've enjoyed these 6 parts. Good job on those. I've got a few closing comments here, so thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
So folks, stay tuned because we have part 6, actually it's part 5, we have one more coming after this show, of retired Pastor Bob Russell as he dives into some of the decision fatigue issues facing Christians and those out there just looking for more comfort and encouragement in the many decisions you'll have to make in life. So stay tuned, Bob Russell will be coming right up.
This Tony Walker Financial 5-star review comes to us from Steve. Signed on with Tony Walker Financial after researching other retirement firms. I felt comfortable from day one and trusted his firm more as retirement planning is their expertise. I have had several appointments to check in or make changes and have always felt like a valued customer. I really appreciate that whenever I call, I am always greeted with a live person versus a voicemail or a phone keypad menu I have to go through to get what I need. I feel very confident in my retirement financial future. If you'd like to read more of our 5-star reviews, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Tired of the roller coaster ride of the stock market? Let Tony Walker show you how to smooth out the ride with your money. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement, and we're continuing our journey and these tough decisions that come up. And what I'm getting ready to cover today is probably one of the toughest decisions at all for people to think about, and that would be those who are approaching death. And to help us with this most difficult subject in the studio again is Mr. Bob Russell. Good morning again, Bob.
Good morning. You're getting somebody who's the closest to death that you know. I mean, I turned 82 a couple of weeks ago, so I ought to be an expert on this subject.
Well, when we called to arrange for this, they mentioned something at the end of the year, and I thought, can we move that up just a little bit? Because I remember you saying you're 82. No, just kidding. Okay, so Bob, let's take 2 different groups of people that might be watching this. Those who are firm believers or followers of Jesus Christ, but they may have cancer. They've been given a diagnosis of a couple of months. They know the end is clear and evident. What can you say to those people just to remind them and encourage them in this difficult time?
When my father died, I had a friend who looked at me and said, well, now it's time for you to believe what you say you believe. That may sound harsh, but that's the truth. When we get down to this stage of life, we say, do I really believe what I say I've believed all my life? Yeah, I believe it, and I'm going to put my trust in it. And we find comfort in that hope of life eternal. If you're on a cruise ship in the Caribbean and it was overtaken by terrorists, and the terrorists came over the intercom and said, we're going to blow this ship up in 3 days, but in the meantime, go ahead and have fun. You probably wouldn't have much fun. For you to have a good time, you got to be confident that there's a safe harbor in view. And in life, in order for us to enjoy life, we have to be confident that there's a safe harbor. The Bible says we don't sorrow as those who have no hope, but we believe in Jesus. I love that passage in 2 Corinthians 4 that says, therefore we don't lose heart. Though outwardly we waste away, yet inwardly we're being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. What is seen is temporary, what is unseen is eternal. And the next verse says, now we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we've got a building of God, eternal in the heavens, not built by human hands. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So if you really believe what you say you believe, the closer you get to death, actually, the more joyful you ought to be. If you believe what you say you believe. My grandson came home from his freshman year in college, and all the family went out to eat. In the middle of the conversation, he said, hey, Pop, how come you and Nan aren't grouchy like a lot of older people? And I took that as a great compliment. And it gave me an opportunity to tell him why. I said, Andy, if we really believe that we're getting closer to heaven, we ought to be more joyful. The church ought to be full of older people who are joyful. I said, you know how I hate overseas flight? I've flown from India and China, 16-hour flights. I hate them. When do you think I'm the happiest? 15 minutes after takeoff or 15 minutes before landing?
That's good.
15 minutes before landing, I don't feel as good. I don't look as fresh. I may stink, but I'm happier because I'm almost home. And if Christian people really believe what they say they believe, the older we get, the happier we ought to be because we're almost home.
And then now that second group, people that might be watching or listening to this show, they might be saying, oh, that sounds good, Bob, but I just have trouble believing, and I just can't believe this thing ends up in death. What words of encouragement can you share with them?
Well, the Bible talks about the gift of faith. There's some people who have a gift of faith. They never doubt. They Simon Peter in the Bible, Lord, if that's you, bid me to come walk on the water, I'll do it. And then some people are innately skeptical. Thomas, I'm not going to believe it until I see the nail scars in his hands. It's interesting. It's harder for some people to believe than others. But it's interesting that the Lord was very patient with honest doubters. Now, they're dishonest doubters who say, I doubt it, because they don't want to change their life. They don't want to repent. But they're honest doubters who say, I want to believe, but I'm still skeptical. And the Lord was patient with Thomas, come see. Or John the Baptist, are you the Messiah or not? You know what do? Go tell John, the lame see, lame walk, and the dead arise, and the blind see. So if you're an honest doubter and you want to believe, be like Thomas, who put himself in a position where he was most likely to have evidence. Go to church. Read the Bible. In fact, Romans 10 says, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Don't just sit back and say, I don't know if I believe it or not. Read it, and you find out supernaturally the Holy Spirit will convict you. Associate with people who do believe, and let that rub off on you some. And then act on the little bit of faith that you have. Jesus said, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, you can move mountains. And sometimes if we act on the little bit of faith we have, it increases. We're like the man in the Bible who asked Jesus to heal his son. He said, do you believe I can? And the man says, I believe, help my unbelief. And I think we have to act on the faith that we have, and we find out that God increases that seed as it's planted.
That was excellent. And I think we've got one more, unfortunately, out of time. You're going to stick around, right? I really appreciate you doing this. Folks, this is the Worry-Free Retirement. I'm Tony Walker, and if we can be of any help between now and the next time we meet, be sure to log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. We'll do the best we can to serve your needs. But in the meantime, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.